Hey guys, Paul here with Late Night Games. It's currently Monday, the 27th of May. Yes, I know it's Monday and not Friday. I'm a couple days late, but there's a reason for that. As I'd mentioned a couple of times in the previous upcoming weeks, this weekend was Anime North, one of the biggest conventions for anime in Ontario of the year. So that's what I spent most of the weekend doing, was getting ready to and then heading out to that place in Toronto to go to said convention. But before we get into talking about the convention, I do want to talk a few things, touch base real quick on some recent things in the world of gaming news over the past week. Now, last week I mentioned that Nintendo made kind of a dick move when it comes to the Let's Play communities. Microsoft, hot off their heels, announced the Xbox One last week. Now, since I'm sure all of you have heard oodles about this, I'm not going to go too far into it. I personally think the fact that there's no backwards compatibility, which is something a lot of people are upset about, is being blown a little out of proportion in some ways. Allow me to explain myself. Also, the question about always on DRM is definitely hot on people's heels. And the ability to purchase used games is kind of upsetting. My biggest gripe was through the whole announcement, all they focused on was the Kinect integration, and they didn't actually show that many games. Granted, they might be saving that for E3, so they have something to show there. Now, I said that I think the backwards compatibility is being blown out of proportion. The reason I say this is because really, guys, how often have consoles been backwards compatible? Computers, yes, have almost always been backwards compatible to a degree. But consoles, aside from the PS2, which could go backwards to the PS1, the initial releases of PS3, and some of the Game Boy platforms, there really haven't been many. When we went from Nintendo to Super Nintendo, there was no backwards compatibility. Sega Genesis, same thing. Super Nintendo to N64, didn't see any adapters for that. N64 to GameCube? Again, no dice. GameCube to Wii? Now there's one that did have backwards compatibility. But if you look back in the history of gaming, backwards compatibility has been less and less frequent because the medium and the hardware changes so drastically that building it to support the older hardware is just an additional cost. I mean, if they want you to build it into the same, if we want them to build it into the same machine, they'll be putting two machines into one. That'll just drive up the cost. I'm not saying it's not possible to do backwards compatibility. As I said, PS1 and PS2 did it great. GameCube and Wii did it. Game Boy to Game Boy Color did it. Game Boy Color to Game Boy Advance, I don't think did it. I think Game Boy Advance could play standard and advanced games. Game Boy Advance to DS did it, but no longer allowed the playing of original Game Boy games, just DS and advanced cartridges, if you had one that had the advanced slot, but not all DSs have the advanced slot on it. So, backwards compatibility, while something that we would all love to have, isn't a norm to follow. So I don't see why it's that big of a gripe at this point. Now, with DLC and download content not being transferable, that I can see as a gripe. That I appreciate your guys' upsetness with. Because if I'm downloading a game from a cloud that can be just played on like an emulator or whatever, I expect that to be transferable. I mean, from what I'm hearing, and don't quote me on this, the new Xbox isn't even really going to be very open to indie developers and people making their own games and selling them on the Xbox marketplace. And that, to me, is just bad business decision, as right now, indie game developers are where it's at. Look at Minecraft. Look at Terraria. Look at some of the biggest games we've seen in these past few years, and most of them are done by independent developers who have just found something that hits with the resonates with gamers and just blows itself out of proportion. But anyways, that's all I really wanted to talk about with gaming news. news on the channel, not a whole lot going on. I've been still working to catch up after that whole debacle with the computer breaking and then working on the car for a week and now being at a convention all weekend. But I have been doing some collaborative play with Keldall and Blamilton from Blamilton Games and Keldall Games. And I've also done some playing with Nathan on Borderlands, which we'll be releasing sometime this week coming up. That's right, the Borderlands 2 game play that we were going to do way back when this channel started is finally being released. So I hope to have that for you guys sometime this week. Anywho, though, as I was saying, headed out to the convention this weekend. So the first thing we did was get into the Firebird and take to the open roads. Now, my camera girl has a bit of a shaky hand, so she wasn't really that steady, but we got a little bit of footage. The open highways, it was a gorgeous day. I mean, look at the sky. It's just so totally clear and blue and beautiful. And hey, put your hands back on that wheel. Good boy. Sorry about that. Apparently I decided to take my hands off the wheel for a moment. Blamilton, you did not see that. But we got tired of sitting behind the rest of the cars, so we picked up a little speed, took off past the rest of the traffic on the 401. Yes, I notice half my gauges don't work. That's fine. There's no need to focus on that, Amanda. Amanda was my camera girl. But once we hit Toronto, we started to know we were close. The streets were covered with cosplayers, and then there it was, the Toronto Congress Center. Guys, no matter how much footage we captured, there was no way to do justice just how massive this place was. I mean, really, there had to be thousands of people. I've never seen this many cosplayers in one place. Like, just stopping at the intersection between the convention center and the Doubletree Hotel. The convention takes place both in the hotel and in the convention center. The convention center is where the dealer's room is, and then the Doubletree Hotel is where a bunch of the panels are, where you can watch anime, viewing rooms, as well as restaurants. But just look at how many people, and see if you can pick out some of the cosplays. I mean, it's insane, just the sheer volume. It's like an entirely new culture. It's breathtaking every time I go. Now, that guy there, he appreciated the Firebird. He noticed my license plate, I guess, because he pointed at that and then just gave a thumbs up and a smile, and that I like. Anywho, we continued on from here. As soon as the traffic allowed us to break through, we pulled into the convention center parking lot. And just, I'm going to give you guys here a moment just watching the sheer immenseness of it all. Like, so much creativity and so much work goes into every single person who comes to these places. It's just mind-blowing. It's really something to behold, and it's quite an impressive feat. I mean, we got a Sephiroth there, and I'll be honest, I could maybe recognize 2/3 of the costumes. Okay, Amanda, enough with the zoom. Stop zooming. Your hand's shaky enough as is without zooming. There we go. Nope, stop the zoom. Stop. When you zoom, you're really shaky. That there she just zoomed in on, though, was a music player from Majora's Mask. But it was a beautiful day out. There was a lot of wind, however, especially right outside the Doubletree Hotel. It became like a wind tunnel of sorts. But just driving past the convention center, or Congress Center, sorry, it's just from end to end, nothing but people sitting there having fun, people selling video games, people taking pictures, people posing. There was a live band out there. I mean, this was just... I've been to a few conventions since starting up this channel. Nothing like this. I had been to Anime North a few years ago, but I forgot just how massive this place really is and how many people there actually are. I mean, so many smiling faces, and everyone's so friendly too. That's the part that blows me away the most. Everyone is super friendly. even if they're not necessarily the friendliest people, while they're there, they're friendly. Oh, there's a Banana Man that we just passed by, and a Vocaloid, and there were some Pikachus, there was some Mises from Death Note, there was a couple of Clouds, a whole bunch of Marvel superheroes. Really, it was just probably one of the most unreal experiences I ever experienced. Like, just even looking at the footage now, because I was focusing on driving at this point, I didn't see just how much there actually was. Now, unfortunately, we weren't able to get into the Congress Center. By the time me and Amanda got there, all the tickets had been sold out. I didn't think to pre-order any. That was my bad. So we couldn't get into the dealer room and show any of the actual object items for sale. So we spent the entire day wandering around outside, mingling with the cosplayers, and my god, it was, as I said, just breathtaking. But without further ado, here's some of the cosplayers, and I did notice a lot of them had a bit of a disco fever going on this weekend. So here's the montage for you guys. And that was it for Anime North 2013. As I said, sorry I couldn't get inside to give you guys a little bit of a better look, but I am going to be ordering my Fan Expo tickets probably shortly after I finish this video, so as I do not run the risk of not getting footage there. Well, guys, take care. We'll see you next week.